Welcome to lesson number 6. In today's lesson, we are continuing on from lesson number 5, looking at lists. You should have already seen how to create lists, append data to lists, and how you can print data from lists. But now we're looking at how you can update a list, how you can print all the data from a list using iteration, and how we can do certain data science on that list. So let's begin. So in our previous video, we made this, which was just a way to add things to our to-do list. We're going to now make it so we can add lots of things to our to-do list all at once. So let's make a new Python file and we shall call it lesson 6. And we kind of stuffed up the naming in the previous one. We're going to call it list part 2 and save. And I'm just going to refactor that previous one from last week or from whenever you last watched it. And we're going to call this just 5 and we'll say list part 1. All right, can close that. So in today's lesson, we're going to make another to-do list, but we're going to call this new to-do list. Get that camel casing right. And we're going to make it blank. And we're going to find out how we can add loads of different items to our list. We're going to use both a for loop and a while loop, or we might just stick with the for loop for now. So to add items to our list, we know we need to say, we need a variable to add it in. So let's just say something like new item equals input. Please add to the list. Okay, so we have a new item. Please add to the to-do list. Let's put there we go. And we want to use this to add to our list, so we use the append function again. So new to-do list dot append, and we'll say new item, and this will add one thing to our list. Let's now wrap it in a for loop. So we'll say for, and we used I last time. I'm going to use E this time. For E in range, let's say 5. And there's a reason we're using a for loop for now. You might say, but what if I want to add more than 5 items? Very good point. We're going to get to that. Now I've got an error there. If you know why I have an error there, then go ahead and fix it. If you don't know why I have an error there, then you need to scratch up on your indenting, because we need to indent it to make it part of this for loop. So right now I should be able to add 5 items to my to-do list, and just to double check they all go in there, I'm going to print to a new to-do list. There we go. All right, let's run it and let's add my items. So what would I like to add? I'm just going to go A, B, C, D, and E, and there's my items in my to-do list. Very good. What if I want to add more though? So a real sneaky way I could get around it is I could say this. Item amount equals int input. How many items would you like to add? Question mark. And then this item amount, I can put it in as my range. So that means whatever I add in there, it's going to add that. So let's run it. All right, how many items? I'd like to add 2 items to my list. Thank you very much. And that'll be A. Oh, and I just pushed enter straight away, so I added a blank item. So that's a bit of a sneaky way around it, where it'll loop that many times. It's not the nicest way, but it does work. So a nicer way to maybe go and do that would be to use a while loop and a Boolean value. So let's go and update that to this. So if I just remove these two and write while add item, add item equals false. There we go. And I need to make a Boolean value, so add item equals false. Then we're going to do this, and then we might say something like this. If let's get an input, sorry. continue, can't use continue. Let's just say add new equals input. Would you like to add more? Question mark. And then we'll say yes, y/n. We'll say if add new equals y, or let's just say n, that's easier. And I need to put it in a string. If it equals n, then we will say, so they say no, add item equals true. All right, that should work. So now this will run forever, I guess. So please add item A. Would you like to add more? So because I just wrote this, if add new equals n, it means everything else, anything I put in here will go again. So if I put P, it'll run again. What would you like to add B? If I say Y, it'll go again, C. And if I just start spamming lots of stuff, there we go, it'll just keep going. Now what I might do now is say no, oh sorry, that's the wrong one, say no now, and there we go. My list ended and I have all of this random stuff in my list. So you can see I've used here a while loop to be able to add items to my list. Now we can do one other thing with our lists, and that's when we want to print loads of items from the list. So I'm going to grab, I might just make it actually. I'm going to grab a list and I'm just going to put a bunch of names in the, let's go numbers. So a bunch of numbers in the list. So let's pretend that we have a class list of results. So first student got 70%. We'll make it a boolean. 70. Next one got 52%. Not a boolean, that's a real. And it wants a space to be in after each one, as you can see. And the next one got 40%. Next one got 32%. Next one, oops. Next one got 90%. We'll do three more. 10%. That one sucked. And the next one, 88%. Okay. And I need to move that. So now we've got this new, it's not a to-do list, it's, we'll call this class results equals, and we have this one. And we might just remove all this stuff underneath. We don't need that anymore. We saw how to use it. If you need a copy of it, you could always make another one calling, you know, A and B and whatever, but it's not needed. So we have these class lists, and what I want to do, I want to do a couple of things. I want to find out what the overall average was of all of these results from my list. And I also want to print them out one at a time, not all together. And by not all together, I mean I don't want this. So if I just print that, that just gives me everything. I want them to come out one at a time. So how I can go about it is I can use a loop to loop through and give me each one. This is where for loops come in handy. So if I want to go through this list, I can say this. For, and what letter should we use now? We're going to say for T in range. Now, I'm not going to put anything in here just yet. If we were to count here how many elements we have in the list. So we know the index location starts at 0, but that still is a number, right? So if I'm counting how many I have in here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I could write 7 there if I wanted to loop through this 7 times. But that's only in this scenario. If there was, you know, another 5 added to it, or if there was some taken away from it, or anything like that, this number will be out, and it could result in getting an error because it's out of range. Let me just put that in there. So to get around that, there's this nice little thing we can do. We could say for T in range, and then we can use this len, so L-E-N, so len. And what that does is it gets the length of whatever we want. So if I put another bracket, and I say the length of class result. So what this will do is it will say, okay, how many things are in your list? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now this will equal 7. If I add one more in and I go 18.0, now it's going to go, oh, well, now we have one more. We have 8 in the list. So this is really handy. It means we're never going to go out of range and get an error. So by using that. So if I now say print class result and close it off. Well, hopefully you can see it's just going to give me sort of the ugly output, but it's going to give it to me a bunch of times. You can see there. But that's not what I wanted. I wanted to print one at a time. So if I said, okay, well, print me what's at position 0, and I run it, what's going to happen? Well, it's just going to give me what's at position a bunch of times. So if only there was a way that we had a variable that went up each time it looped. And hang on a sec, there was one. Let me just go print t, that variable we made there. If I run that variable, what is that? Well, that starts at 0, doesn't it? Which aligns with our first value in our list. So I can use this variable here to print out all the elements in my list. So let me try it. So if I grab that and I say print, and then I do my brackets and write t. Well, will that work? Because I mean, the first time it goes around, t is going to be equal to 0, which means it's going to grab me what's at position 0. And then when it goes round and back again, t is going to be 1. So it's going to grab me what's at position 1 and 2 and 3 and so on. So let me run this now. And you can see it has now got me every single value in my list using this kind of clever way of using this variable in our for loop against the variable we want in our result. Now the other thing I wanted was I wanted the average. So what I could do here is this. Instead of saying print, I could say average is equal to this result plus, well, if I go back here, I could say average plus that result there. So whatever's that position there, it's going to add it in. So if I run this now, I get an error. Why did I get an error? Let's have a look. It said at line 5, so this line here, and I think it's because a couple of things. I don't think it knows what average is. So I have to actually make average first. So average equals 0.0. And let me try run that again. Okay. I never told it to print me the average either. And those of you who know your maths will know I'm not actually getting the average. I'm getting the sum at this point. And there's the sum. So how could I get the average? Well, I could just say this divided by, and if only there was a way I could get the code to automatically count how many numbers are in there. There is. It's used just here. So if I say divided by, and I'm just going to steal this bit of code just here. I'm going to grab all of it, copy and paste. And I don't need that one. So I'm getting the average divided by the length of the list, and obviously that's how we get our averages. And I run that. I now get 50.25. So you can see how a for loop has this special feature that you can use. Now you could make that in a while loop, but it's a lot more manual and it'll take a bit more time. So the easy way to do it is to use it within you could make it in a while loop, but it'll take a long time. A for loop comes with the tools in order to make it nice and easy like you see there. Now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to import a custom function to generate us random values. Now we learn more about these later on when we get to modules and functions, but for today I'm just going to show you the code we're going to use to populate our class result full of loads of random values, so we can really illustrate this point of putting values into a list and being able to use things like this length to make it easy for us. So to do that, we're just going to enter down here a few times and give ourselves a little bit of space, and we're going to write at the top from random import rand int, like so. And you see it should grey out at first because we're not using it anywhere, so you just gets grey like that. And essentially what this is saying is find this module of random wherever it is, and this is sort of one that's behind the scenes of Python, and we want to use this tool rand int here. And by doing that, all this already made code for us, we can import it into our Python project without having to know exactly what it does. So it's a nice way of pulling in some custom tools that we might want to use. So to get our random value, well, we're going to need to do another for loop to add it to our list. And to really illustrate that, let's go and do this. Let's remove all these values from our list. And just underneath class result, we're going to say for m in range, and then we'll just say how many do we want to do. Let's say In fact, let's go above here and say total values equals int input, and then we'll say how many values would you like to add, and then here we'll say for m in range total values, and then we will use this rand int command. So we'll say class result dot append, and inside here I can save that value. Now to make it really clear, I'm going to make rand int just a random. So I'm going to say random, a new variable called random. So that's equal to rand int between 0.0 and 100.0, and then I'm going to say class result dot append random. So that means append will add it to the next available position in my list, and random will be this random value that we've made. And then I've got that print down the bottom here, which will print me the result. So let's run that. I'd like to add 100 values, and you can see we added in 100 random values, and we got an average at the end. And if I run this again, let's say 50 random values, you can see I get 50 random values. The higher I go with my values, the closer this will become, will get to 50. The lower I go, well, then it could be further apart. So if I go 10, you can see 57. Let's go something really high. Let's go like that. And you can see it got very close to 50 just there. Okay, so that's how we use the import, or how we import a function from elsewhere. There are heaps of these that we can use and import. We can even make our own later on, but for now, that's just a really convenient one using rand int. And you can see just here is how we assigned all those values into all these values. You can see there's a lot of them into our list for us to do some calculations with. So I hope you learned something in this video, and I'll see you in the next one.